gonna keep moving and layer up for the descent. Yeah, it is getting snowy up here. Oh, I am cooked. Last week I rode a good section of about a third of the Traka 560, and I realised I've actually ridden most of the rest of it before, so I have some pretty good insight into the route, and I thought it might be helpful to make a video to kind of share my insights and how I'm preparing and planning for the ride in a video. So that's what you're here for, stick around. Okay, let's break down this route. So pretty straightforward. Just for the purpose of kind of navigation, you've got this as the coastline here, and then we're going to put Girona here in the middle, okay? So, fairly straightforward start. Obviously, you have to get out of the city, right? So the start-finish is kind of like this, out, and quite varied, actually. You're going from some roads to some bike paths to some trails, all fairly straightforward stuff. To be honest, some of it is pretty bangy, some of it is pretty rocky, but I think you just need to get through it. I wouldn't change anything in your setup just because of the start finish. So from here you kind of join a bike path which kind of takes you up here, and then here you have the town of Olot. I always pronounce that wrong in Spanish or Catalan. So the bike path is very wide, fairly popular with other cyclists. You probably see other riders, although it's very early in the morning, so maybe not. This is very straightforward. For probably a slightly gradual uphill, you go through a few cafes if you do want to stop for a coffee, and there are some taps here, so if you do want to top up your water before you get up here, you can do. And then from here you join, you basically, this takes you up into the more Pyrenees, the more mountainous region, close to the border to France. So you have kind of a warm-up climb here, which is fairly steady, and then you have these three big main climbs, which are up to and around 2,000 meters. The first one is slightly less so. The second two are above 2,000 meters, and the second two you do hit kind of the snow line. So when I went last week, and I still think it will be there when the race is on in a couple of weeks, there is snow there. I don't think you need to change anything about your setup because of these kind of periods of snow. It just gives you an idea of how high up you are, and also kind of should make you aware that you do need to bring some pretty decent layers mostly for the descent, so you stay warm when you're coming down for that long, because you're going to be descending for like half an hour, or maybe not half an hour, but you're descending for quite a while. And then also, worst case scenario, if you did get a puncture or you had a problem up at that elevation, you have layers and things to keep you warm while you figure out, you know, how you're going to get down, how you're going to solve the problem. I wouldn't pack any snow tires. I wouldn't base my bike setup around the fact that there's going to be snow at the top. It's just something to be aware of. These climbs are tough but relatively steady, and you can pace them fairly well. They are challenging, but yeah, doable. I actually ended my recce of the route around this point, and I rode back to Girona from here. And the reason that I did that was because this later part of the route, which kind of does this and then comes down to the coast here, and then this is like a coastline here. It follows the coastline down and sort of comes out a bit here. I'm just going to finish the route now because I've started it. Kind of does this. Sort of looks like a bit of a chicken dog type thing, doesn't it? Anyway, so the reason that I finished my recce here was because I realized in kind of my planning for this trip that all of this part of the route is pretty much the 2023 Traka 360 route. So this is the Cap de Creus National Park section. So this is a very hilly, mountainous, not really small mountainous section here with some fairly technical single tracks and fairly rocky and bumpy. So this is the place where you probably need to really have your wits most about you with the descending and looking after your bike and looking after your tires. Real flat land territory here, which again, if you've done the race, you'll remember is a lot of bike paths following rivers, very straightforward, rolling through farms, and there's lots of towns and villages all along here. And then here you have, around sort of this point, you have a fairly substantial, probably comparable to some of the climbing you would have seen here, climb, and then you have kind of rolling bumps, small climbs into the start finish, which is fairly straightforward and fairly flat. So that's kind of a rough overview of the ride. The one, and I'll give the caveat, the one bit of the route I'm not so sure of is this bit immediately after I left the ride, and then the climb that's here before you kind of come into the national park. From what I can see, the trails look similar, or the road quality looks similar to the road quality here, but it does look to be a steeper climb. So not as high, but it does look to have some quite large sections of above 10%. So this part I don't know so well, so I cannot comment on this part here. This, however, yeah, I've done, like I said, technical riding, not very high climbs, but quite challenging, and then real flat land with some more climbing here. So the way that I am splitting up this route, both kind of for my brain and also for my body and for my refueling strategy and all that, which we'll come on to, is as such. So you kind of have the start here, this is part one, right? You have the mountainous section here, which is part two. You have the descent off of this section and this kind of unknown climb that I'm not so sure about here, that's part three. You have the Cap de Creus National Park, fairly technical, fairly spiky, fairly challenging part of the ride here, that's part four. You have the flat land area going through the towns and villages, which is part five, and then you have the finishing section here, which is the bump into the rolling area here, which I mentioned. Now, what's quite interesting about this, and what I think is quite helpful from a planning point of view, is as such. This is relatively easy, this is hard. I think this will be relatively easy in comparison, apart from that pinch climb that I mentioned, that fairly large climb, but this is all rolling descents. This is hard, this is easy, this is hard. So it's easy, hard, easy, hard, easy, hard, all the way to the finish. And that's obviously nice because you know you have these sections where you can kind of breathe and settle into the ride and not be as 100% locked on as you were for maybe the more challenging sections. Now let's talk about the strategy of timings. Now I can only speak for what I'm going to do, and I can only speak for how I'm going to get through this ride. So this is my rough strategy. So we're starting here about 6 a.m. I want to be around the town of Alot coming into the Pyrenees. I would say at latest by like 9 a.m. I'd really like to do this part in sort of between 2 and 3 hours, okay? I've done this and I know that this is going to take a while. I think I want to get here where I bailed from the recce that I started. I want to get here by sunset. So let's say sort of 7, 8 o'clock. So this is going to take, I think, a majority of the day for most people, if not longer for some, because it's just big climbs. It's big climbs, it's big descents, and I think there'll be some significant refueling. So people are going to have stop time here because there are a few towns when you're descending down off these mountains that people will want to get water and fuel in. And I would recommend you get water and fuel in here because this part here is pretty isolated. You go through towns, but they're not going to be probably open by the time you get to them. It's going to be nighttime, and a lot of them are tourism towns, and these tourism mountainous areas are not really very well populated right now. So I want to get here by nighttime. I imagine I'm going to do this climb here that I mentioned and the Cap de Creus section through the night. I mean, let's be honest, it's nighttime. I'm going to be pretty shattered by then. I think this is going to take me a while. I would love to get around here by sunset. I would love to be able to know that I've got that big section behind me, see the sun rising, and know that I have this flat bit to do in the day. And I want to use some of the towns and villages that you see along this part of the route to refuel, get more water in, and kind of set myself up to finish off, come into here, into this hilly section. And I would love to be finished here by the afternoon. I mean, let's say early evening, late afternoon. That's my goal. That's what I'd love to achieve. So yeah, that's kind of my rough plan. I think refueling, like I said, here will be almost impossible. I'll double check, but I really don't think there's any kind of food options through here. It's a national park. It's very isolated. You're essentially riding through forests and mountainous regions. So your food options are going to be limited. There may be some water from rivers and things like that, but I wouldn't bank on it. So really, when you're going through some of the towns and villages here, coming down from the mountains in the Pyrenees, if you see shops and water, you need to be making the most of them. You do see rivers here, so if you're willing to resupply your water from rivers, then you'll probably be okay from that respect. But definitely be aware that your options around here are limited, and then in the daytime they're obviously going to be quite accessible here because you're in a more urbanized, more built up area. I think that's everything. I think those are all kind of my initial thoughts. Obviously there's a couple of weeks to go, so I'm going to keep kind of mulling on this, and if I have updates, maybe I'll drop some comments in below. I want to have an article which I'm going to include with this that will kind of go over this summary as well, so check the description of the video. If I'm able to put that out, I will, and I'll put it in there, so check it out. And yeah, let me know what you think, if this makes sense. And then I may also do a separate video talking about some of the equipment I use for that recce, and some of the changes that I'm making to my bike as a result of the recceing that I've done and the research that I've done. So if you do want to see more from me about the Traka and some of the other gravel stuff I do and the other content I do, yeah, please do subscribe and drop a comment below if you have questions. I really love the Traka races, and I try and be kind of helpful to people who are new to doing them. So if you do have questions, please do comment. And I have done another video on the Traka, it's kind of my only other YouTube video right now. So I will link to that maybe here if I can. If not, I'll put a link in the description. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think.